Duh. Subscribe to the channel. Anya did not notice how half a year had passed since the moment of her arrangement in this restaurant. Such work could only be dreamed of, despite all the difficulties and obstacles. Sometimes she had to stay and even perform other people's work, except for waitresses. But Anya did not refuse, because good tea was paid for it. For a poor girl from a poor family, such money was happiness. The team respected her for honesty and justice. They didn't have the habit of discussing someone in person. If she didn't like something, she said it straight to the face. A couple of times, even the director Nikolai Andreevich dared to speak out, which he reacted patiently to. I understand, Anna Viktorovna, your claims, and I will definitely take them into account. The colleagues were surprised, of course, how she does it. But they themselves did not dare to say such a thing. They were afraid of Nikolai Andreevich, thinking him almost a god. Anya, by nature, was purposeful, and if she thought of something, she would definitely do it. In any case, she went to this without looking for easy ways. Her whole life was connected with obstacles, and Anya got used to them. It was honesty and selflessness that made her even stronger. She definitely won't be easy for her, and if she's lucky somewhere, then next time she'll have to fight. The self-preservation instinct also told her where to break and not to get into a specially arranged network. That day, together with the rest of the colleagues, she decorated the hall. It had to look pompous and bright. At least, this is how the owner of the restaurant ordered himself before leaving for important business. And he had no doubt that they would cope with everything. He especially relied on Anya as the most responsible worker, and sometimes even as an example, he put her to other employees. And no one was jealous. On the contrary, they tried to comply with her. Anya was able to maintain friendship, even if she had to make a remark to someone. Despite the fact that she was just a waitress, they listened to her. Therefore, the owner blessed her, marking her merits. It can be said that Anya received this position in time and took over the rescue circle. Colleagues began to discuss that the hall was decorated for the wedding, and Anya heard that the surgeon, Anton Konstantinovich, who was known in their town, decided to marry. The girl was excited to find out the details and approached one of the waitresses. "You won't believe it. I don't know anything myself," she said. The owner said that in addition to the surgeon and his acquaintances, the mayor himself will be with his wife. He is close friends with Anton Konstantinovich. "Are you serious?" Anna was surprised and asked. "Well, I'm telling you what I heard," Katia crossed the line. "But to be honest, the mayor is still the same. What's wrong with him?" "I see," said Anya. "But I think he won't cause us any trouble. At least not on this day for sure." She didn't ask any more questions. And it was clear that we had to prepare for a serious event. And if the mayor should appear on it, then it's double responsibility. As far as Anya knew, several structures were headed in the city, which the whole business was subordinate to. It seems that the surgeon was also one of them, or had some kind of connection with the mayor. In general, there was a lot of nervousness around. Everyone understood that there should be no mistakes, otherwise the owner will have to defecate, and he does not like it when he is stuffed into the dirt. Therefore, the staff of the restaurant was busy marking each detail so as not to miss anything. Anya was responsible for her own plot, and everything was in order with her. Their family was not full-fledged. Although they were the only child, no one else was raised except her mother. She never saw her father. Of course, she tried to ask her mother questions on this topic, but she was constantly absent. Irina Vasilyevna worked as a maid in a hotel. She had such a schedule that she didn't have time to rest at all. And even talking to her daughter was not always possible. So Anya grew up in a complete information vacuum. Or rather, Mom didn't share any secrets with her. Hence the ignorance about her father, which, to be honest, she really wanted to see. Anya thought that Mom was just obliged to tell where he was going. But Irina Vasilyevna always found a reason to leave the answer. But left this position after she was born. It is not clear what prompted Irina Vasilyevna to give up this job, but she didn't want to tell anything. And if the daughter tried to find out something again, she translated the topic. It seemed that this was some kind of secret, but she didn't understand what was the point of it and why he was so pressured by her mother. It was not without a trace for her at the time when she was studying at school. Every day, she had to feel emotional pressure. And all because the peers treated her with contempt. Anya could not boast of beautiful and fashionable clothes. Although it is not to say that this was the prestige, but the most attention was paid to the new clothes. And if the student constantly wore the same clothes, then he was considered a poor man. This happened to Anya, but she found courage in herself not to react to their ridicule. Yes, they were sometimes offensive, but patience and purposefulness did not let her down and let go. Of course, Mom tried to make her daughter have all the necessary clothes, but she first of all came from the fact that you need to buy things that are practical, quality, inexpensive, and most importantly convenient, and can serve as long as possible. But on the other hand, there was still a catastrophic shortage of money in the family. Mother was carefully disguised by the fact that she often took a debt. Then, of course, she gave it back, but soon again she took it. And so in a circle, no hope for a bright future. Anya understood all this and did not grieve to her mother for the fact that she did not have everything that her superiors had. And in order to help at least somehow, she periodically ran away from lessons and came to the motel. Here Anya helped her mother in the hope that they would earn more. But it was a mistake, because Irina Vasilyevna's monthly calculations did not change. She got the same amount. The owner of the hotel was not going to spend more money on the service staff. It didn't matter to him at all that someone was helping someone there, as the business says, and nothing personal. Meanwhile, at school, Anya tried not to get involved in any contradictions and conflicts, even if they tried to impose them. But one day, she still had to stand up for herself. And it happened in the 7th grade just before the new year. She rehearsed the role of a fairy tale fairy with the head of the creative circle. By that time, almost everything was ready, but the school director intervened and asked another girl to play this role instead of Anna. She turned out to be the daughter of a rich family, who without any embarrassment expressed their contempt for Anna. It's good that the leader of the circle joined her. She even had to withstand the confrontation with the rich family. But in the end, Anya kept this role for herself and played it perfectly on the Christmas tree. Another case happened already in the th grade, when she was preparing a newspaper wall. The class leader instructed Anya to create a model and write a few notes. She did it perfectly, but again the very daughter of the rich interfered. She also wanted to be a writer, and this despite the fact that she constantly received not very good ratings in Russian and literature. They had to fight for their rights again. With difficulty, but she achieved to stop this girl from interfering with her. After everything was done, the wall of the newspaper was hung in the most visible place. There she placed notes about school life, sports events, and various successes. In return, she received praise and respect from the entire team of teachers. However, the status of the beggar still remained behind her. It seems as if he had stuck on purpose. That their parents simply spoiled them. After all, they could not boast good marks while Kanya was always in honor of teachers. They set her example, without suspecting that they are pushing the poor girl into the swamp of brawls and insidious parishes. No one even thought about which tests she had to go through. And only the head of the creative circle, Margarita Pavlovna, as she could, supported Anya. One day they had a rehearsal of the performance, and she had to stay. In such cases, Anya warned Mom not to worry. And so, having spoken several times about her role in the script, Margarita Pavlovna sat down on the wooden steps and called for herself. "I know, Anya, that you have problems with classmates." She started. "No, I don't want to talk to them," Anya prayed. "I understand, but if you don't discuss this problem, it won't be solved by itself," said Margarita Pavlovna. "Exiled once. Are you serious?" The girl was surprised and asked. "Quite," Margarita Pavlovna answered. "I still remember this with a friend. Do you think there were no sons of rich parents in our time?" "Probably not," she answered uncertainly. "Back then, there was the USSR and everyone was equal. We were told that way." "That's right," Margarita Pavlovna smiled and said, "but in the party where my mother was, there were also those people who made a career for themselves. They had everything for a full life. Travels to the best sanatorium, extra salary, even the possibility to buy free goods without any obstacles. Their children dressed better than many school students, including me, because we didn't have such benefits. I heard something similar from my mother, but I didn't think it was true." Anya thoughtfully said. Therefore, don't pay attention to your offender, said Margarita Pavlovna. They don't know what awaits them in the future. I can say that those who laughed at me ended badly. The Soviet Union fell apart, and they were left without support. And I continued to go to my goals and received higher education. However, I did not go to the theater, as I decided to devote myself to children. Margarita Pavlovna, one might say, became a guiding star for her. She shared her secrets and experiences with her. She prepared costumes for almost all the performances of the head of the theater herself. At home, she sewed them at night and brought them in the morning. And as soon as Anya had a free minute, she immediately invited them, for an example. This friendship could not be ignored by classmates, but they failed to make fun of this wave. Margarita quickly put them in place, explaining who and what they were worth. She tried to choose the right words for this. You behave like a non-faggot hooligans, said Margarita Pavlovna, adding notes to the list. You don't even have the courage to admit that Anya is good at all. I don't consider her appearance. She dresses in what is comfortable for her. Think about her behavior. After all, it is not difficult to fly high. It is much more painful to fall from there. Maybe her words reached their consciousness, but they still did not refuse to mock Denmark. Moreover, they complained to their parents that some teacher scolded them for nothing. After that, Margarita Pavlovna had a conversation with the school principal. But she came out of his office with a happy smile. He couldn't do anything to her. Apparently, there were people who stood up for her and put the director in place. Naturally, Anya learned about this, and frankly speaking, she was very surprised. She did not expect that Margarita Pavlovna would take such a cool job for her classmates. It seems that they're not relatives, but still decided to help. For some time, though, the other thing is that the classmates were fussing like crazy flies, and no matter what they did, knowledge did not become from this. Even the tutors could not correct the situation because most of them barely passed the test. Anna passed the exams perfectly, but she did not go to the graduation, and not only because she did not have money, she just did not want to see her enemies there. They would still have to communicate and look at each other. Why did she have such tests, especially for the nervous system? No. Anya decided not to test her fate and refused the festive event. She didn't tell her mom about it, and whatever she suspected, she spent the whole evening in the park. There she fed ducks in the pond and listened to music that she played specifically for graduates. It was in this place that Anya felt much better. The thick forest around was kind-hearted and affected the psyche. He was calming down, giving the opportunity to calmly think about his future. But a month passed after school, and Annie's mother fell asleep. She had problems with her internal organs. Constant pains did not give her peace, and forced Irina Vasilyevna to almost climb the wall. At such moments, her daughter was always near and tried to calm down. But where is she? It was difficult to do anything without medication. Margarita Pavlovna helped. She gave money for the medicine. But this help turned out to be the last one, because she had to leave school and move to another city soon. The director still achieved his goal and got rid of the head of the creative circle. Instead, he found another person who showed more loyalty, and now the children of rich parents were involved in the performances. The poor were not allowed to go there. They were just spectators, so to speak, enjoying the art from the depths of the hall. The medicine that Margarita Pavlovna bought was enough for a month. Then Madianya was lying in the hospital with a dead weight, taking a bed. Of course, they approached her, prescribed treatment, but it didn't help much. Even the chief doctor was upset, saying that they could not do anything. Irina and Vasilyeva discovered kidney cancer. The prospect of returning to normal life was at risk. The mother literally went blind. Anya came to her room, often cried, but could not help her. Mom, why is life so unfair to us? Anya whispered with tears in her eyes. So that's how it was destined? Her mother calmed down, stroking her head. But don't despair. You have everything ahead. I know you will not disappear and break your way in this life. The words of the mother sounded like a sentence. Anya could not help but understand that this way she would say goodbye to her. But to convince herself that she was so condemned, she certainly could not. The girl tried to hold on, but still sometimes she gave up her nerves. When coming home, she quietly cried in the pillow, and no one was to comfort her. because a family vacuum was forming around them. Everyone turned away from their families, although they were not very close. Months passed, and Irina Vasilyevna became more and more a walking ghost. She could barely cope with moving around on her own. In the store next to the house, Anya worked as a cleaner. The money was small, but she had enough for bread. They were so expensive that she was even afraid to say the prices aloud. Slowly, Irina Vasilyevna's deafness stopped recognizing her. Anya came to the room, and her mother just sat on the bed and looked at one point. And all attempts to talk to her about anything did not lead to anything. Having calmed down with the fact that the disease would soon win, Anya began to prepare for independent life. Not to become a victim of the black realtors. Half a year later, Mom died. Irina was buried in a city cemetery. She was helped by the mayor with money for burial, and a little social services were given. They promised that they would support her. But these promises turned out to be empty words. After a month had passed since the funeral, they had forgotten about her. No one even thought about checking. Anya became an orphan, and no one was in a hurry to help. There was no point in entering the highest educational institution. Rather, Anya could not afford it. At that moment, the question was sharp about where to get a job. Of course, the shopkeepers were being Anya began to go for an interview. Despite the fact that some offices were too far from home, she had to get there on foot. She just didn't have money to pay for transport every time. But it so happened that no one was in a hurry to take her without experience and education. All employers wanted to have a ready-made specialist at hand, and they had absolutely no desire to deal with a person who still had to study. Anya was looking for a job at different companies for a long time, until she finally came across an elderly restaurant owner. Nikolai Andreevich was just looking for another waitress. You know, Anna Viktorovna, I don't take people from the street, but something tells me that you are exactly the worker I need. The owner of the restaurant uttered these words, making a thoughtful look. If you hire me, you will not regret it. Anya replied cheerfully. I can do the cleaning and help in the kitchen. My mother, the kingdom of heaven, worked as a maid in a motel, and I often came to her when I was in school and saw how everything was going on there and even helped. Well, I think this is a good recommendation. The owner of the restaurant happily wiped his hands and invited Anya to work. He didn't change his principles, no, he just had a great inner feeling. Nikolai Andreevich was very understanding of people, and when he was talking to Anya, he managed to draw certain conclusions. First, she was honest with him, as in the statement. Secondly, she really needed money, not to earn faster and immediately start looking for adventures. And thirdly, she had an idea of how the service sector works. Soon the owner was clearly convinced that Anya was really a responsible worker. She quickly got used to the new place and also quickly befriended the team. All this said that the girl really wanted to earn to live normally. Anya told Nikolai Andreevich about her financial situation at the moment. But the owner was not one of those people who could just take and give money. No, he provided her with the opportunity to get out of the pit. Anya eventually learned to feel the mood of the visitors. She easily managed to arrange them for herself. As a result, they ordered much more dishes than they originally planned, and moreover, when they visited again, they demanded her as a service staff. She was so good at making the impression that the other waitresses secretly envied her. At the same time, they didn't even think about building Anya Kosnia. After a little more time, the girls had permanent fans. They came to the restaurant only to see her. They could just order coffee, but they had to bring it to Anya. The respect and quality of the service made them indescribable delight. The owner of the restaurant saw all this and gave them a little bonus. Not to say that it was a lot of money, but they were warm-hearted. She could afford to buy more products at home on them, and she did not save on the same bread. Even meat began to appear more often in her diet. At the same time, Anya sometimes thoughtfully returned to the time when her mother was sick and needed help. If only this restaurant had turned around right away, everything would have been different. As she continued to work, Anya gained more and more experience. She became wiser and more promising. Sometimes she helped the management when it was necessary to make reports. Anya learned this by diving into the specifics of the restaurant business. She enjoyed serving people and feeding them with the most delicious dishes. One day, When Anya returned from work, she heard a squeak in the grass. She was just passing through the park. It was the closest way to her home. There were many visitors on that day, but all of them were happy. In addition, they managed to get good tea, and Anya was going to buy a cake for them to slightly sweeten their mood. Having stopped, she listened and heard the squeak again. It seemed that there was a mouse somewhere, or someone who looked like her. The girl decided to look into the bushes, burning with curiosity. And then her two legs barely touched. There was a little puppy sitting on the grass. He was so weak that he could not bark or snarl normally. He looked like a nobleman, but it did not bother Anya. She did not divide animals into those who deserve attention and those who can simply pass by. No, everyone was equal for her. "Oh my God, you are hungry and dirty," she said, almost crying. Having taken the puppy in her hands, she got out of the bushes. A woman was passing by. Anna grumbled in the form of a dirty puppy. Apparently, she did not like to see the animal in such a state. That if she had come across him, she would have probably felt sorry for him. Anya looked at her too, and so her legs shook. The woman almost ran away from the park. Having looked at the puppy, Anya happily added, "Well, we will save you." 20 minutes later, she and her found were at her house. Anya thoroughly washed the puppy and put herself in order. She didn't want to eat it all, because she was hungry in the restaurant, and the puppy needed to be fed, especially since after the wash he looked at her with his eyes. Having taken out the milk from the fridge, Anya warmed it up a little and only then poured it into a deep plate. The puppy coped with her in 2 minutes and looked at Anya again. There were still sausages and bacon in the fridge. Having made sandwiches, she fed them with the leftover. Having filled her belly, the puppy was pretty grumpy and laid down near the foot of her new host. She was wearing home slippers, and it seems the dog liked the smooth fur. He put his head on one shoe and the body and tail on the other. Anya waited until he fell asleep, and only after that she moved the puppy to the chair. So he stuck with her, becoming her favorite pet. With him, she walked in the park and just around the city. Without thinking of anything original, she called him a Barson. The wool was white, and indeed something like a snow baron. The pet didn't immediately, but began to respond to the call. He liked to walk with the hostess, and every time he was on the street, the baron was constantly trying to chase the pigeons. No, he did not harm them. He just played and watched them fly in different directions. In such moments, Anya felt really happy. The barista made the host happy with his presence alone. He politely responded to Anya's tenderness. She liked to rub it on her head and stroke her belly. The nurse responded with mutual affection and immediately took to licking her face. Having made the relationship in the restaurant not only with the team, but also with the owner, Anya received permission to take home some of the object. She honestly told Nikolai Andreevich why she needed it. And the one who found out about the dog she found happily said, "That's what you did right, that you didn't pass by." I barely cried then when I found him in the bushes. Anya replied with a sad voice. "To be honest, I also have a dog at home." He knelt down and said, "I saved him from the car 3 years ago when he was crossing the road. None of the passers-by even came up to him, and I took him to the veterinary clinic. Since then we have been together. No water, like 2 pairs of boots. Of course, this is not my business." Anya was not sure. "And how did your wife react to this?" "Quite normal. Larissa is an amazing person." Waved his hand at Nikolai Andreevich. "She loves animals very much, and even sacrifices money to the charity fund to save cats and dogs. And when I brought this dog, it shone with happiness. I sometimes even get jealous if Larissa goes for a walk with him for a long time. Tim became dear to me, as if he were a human." Anya realized that if she continued to delve into this topic, Nikolai Andreevich would be sad and would begin to recall that they had no children with their wives, and everyone in the restaurant, including her, knew that this was a painful topic for the owner. In a hurry, the girl jumped to another topic. "I think Nikolai Andreevich should think about the interior update," she said, and began to look at his reaction. "Oh, yes, you're right. I was just about to do this in the near future." As if the owner of the restaurant answered when he woke up. "And you can take the leftovers in the kitchen. I will warn you about it." Anya noticed a confusion on his face, as if he was upset. and it was possible to assume that Nikolai Andreevich most likely really wanted to speak out. The topic of the lack of fruit of his wife was so relevant that he constantly thought about her. Having seen a girl of a kind and sincere person, the owner of the restaurant apparently wanted to share his pain with her. But Anya cut him in half and translated the topic. He was not offended, but clearly confused, so he answered with a. She had all this in her head when she left the restaurant. She hurried home to please the pet with delicious delicacies. And even though these were just appetizers, it happened that the guests left whole, almost untouched portions. The bar was waiting for Anya right at the door. With a hoarse voice, the puppy was. There, Anya served him a plate and a large portion of mashed potatoes with goulash. How strange. But the restaurant menu also had such dishes. Nikolai Andreevich generally respected healthy food. He himself claimed almost all dishes. Moreover, he even hinted to the chef what to add and what to refuse from. No one argued with him, because the restaurant visitors were simply delighted with the menu. And many of them came on purpose to order homemade food. Meanwhile, Anya was not in a hurry to connect herself with men. She still had a mother in front of her eyes. Irina Vasilyevna raised her daughter alone all her life. Perhaps this circumstance was the reason for Anya's not thinking about marriage yet. Another factor in such a relationship to life was the fate of the owner of the restaurant. It was clear how he sometimes came to the moor, and then he was trying not to disturb him, realizing that probably the house was a problem. Anya was afraid that what if she can't have a child? How will the husband act then, if he is? She just could not imagine it and constantly pushed back the moment when it would be possible to decide on getting acquainted and binding relationships. The barista didn't let her get bored, and every day he came up with new entertainment. With him, Anya didn't feel like a lonely person. On the contrary, it seemed to her that fate had already fully rewarded her. What else could she wish for? Anya had not thought about this yet. She had no far-reaching plans for this. The main thing now is to get up stronger, live on, and then think about the family. All these thoughts and memories were running through my mind like a railroad train with shaking my head. Anya returned to reality and looked at the decorated wedding hall. It seems that she has not forgotten anything. She added lively flowers, beautiful gel balls, and even a golden raincoat with the inscriptions for the newlyweds. It seems that she has taken care of everything. It was possible to meet the guests boldly, especially the surgeon, about whom they said that he was right in the face. Finally, the first guests began to come. Among them was the mayor of the city himself. However, he was not alone. He was surrounded by a number of subjects, as well as impressive security. He was clearly afraid of something, even if he did not go out without a cover during the day. Here, definitely she was a criminal. However, this did not concern Anya, and she, as it should be, and began to meet the guests of the entrance with a bright snow-white smile. Some of them passed by without reacting to the beautiful waitress. Others in response also smiled. And only the mayor walked with sour faces on his face. It seems that he was dragged here by the village. On the other hand, Valery Petrovich never visited this restaurant. In any case, he did not come to the inn. Otherwise, she would have remembered it. Having sat down at the table at his entrance, the mayor put the microphone in front of him and began to look at the empty scene. The security was located in the depths of the restaurant, keeping a circular view for themselves. They did not claim to be important guests, but they still had to bring the dishes from the menu. Anna took this to heart, but first of all, she had to serve the mayor. And at that moment, Katia approached her again. She nodded towards the mayor. "Yes, I know, you have already warned," said Anya. "You shouldn't be so worried. He's not a monster, in fact. Look at yourself, but I would not risk coming up to him." Continue to whisper to Katia. "It is painful to serve a person who can run a plate into you." "Oh, I beg you, Katia." Anya almost laughed. This is no more than an evil offense of those waiters who cannot normally serve customers. It was about the case when the mayor launched a plate into the waitress. This happened in the restaurant Mirage. Valery Petrovich was considered a regular visitor there. However, on that day, he was served by a new girl. She did not know that together with the prepared dish, the mayor was always brought a large napkin. He wiped his three-story chin with it because the sauce was dripping down. But none of the guests of that restaurant paid attention to this. The guards were sitting next to him, and if someone dared to laugh, they would immediately talk privately with him. No, jokes with the mayor did not pass. He just did not understand them. But he liked to show himself, as if only he should have been listened to in the city. Valery Petrovich did not tolerate other people's opinions and immediately left his own. He also liked to drink a lot to gain courage. Moreover, he allowed himself to be attached to women. And all this was happening to please the owners of the restaurants where he was. The mayor did not refuse anything at all, considering his personality to be exceptional. That is why everything was going well for him, even the unshaken visits to businessmen. They paid him a tribute, as they were afraid of a fine. Having gained courage, Anya still approached him and offered a menu. And then it turned out that the mayor had already managed to somewhere thoroughly fill up with alcohol. He smelled like a fire. That's why he walked by her so quickly and didn't even say hello. Seeing the young girl in front of him, the mayor, without looking at the menu, said, "Bring me something meaty so that the fat gets stuck." Anna wanted to ask him what exactly to bring him from the meat, but she didn't do it. She went to the kitchen and asked the chef to prepare delicacies from meat. He laughed. "It's a nightmare. His stomach will soon fall out of his pants. What a fat man. I understand your concern about his health, but the order must be fulfilled." With humor, Anya replied, "What concern is there? I just can't believe that people are able to do this to themselves." The chef waved his hand and went to the stove to cook a meat dish. Anya went back to the hall and stood near the barman's stand, looking at the mayor. She barely sprained her ankle. He sat on a chair so that his belly straightened almost to the floor. And how could such a woman be loved? Especially a legal wife. They said that he was not ashamed to talk about his cheats. And she was patient, because without him, she is zero and nothing means anything. This is how it happens with those who are in a dependent position. In the same situation, only under different circumstances, she was once with her mother. They lived from salary to salary, and everything depended on the owner of the hotel. However, no one cheated on anyone. At the same time, she still knew nothing about her father, who perhaps, for this reason, left the family. Who knows? Maybe he found another woman and left her mother? Thinking about it, Anya barely missed it when he began to call her to his desk. "Mayor, well, why are you standing there next to the bartender? I'm more pretty, and I have more money." Having spread the wings, what is called, the mayor began to offer and drink at the broder shaft, and at the same time dance. However, Anya was not going to make him accompany. "No, I can't. I'm at work. And the owner forbids customers to come in." Anya answered, trying to solve the situation. But the mayor didn't want to hear anything anymore, and demanded a continuation of the banquet. "I'm the owner of everything that is in this city." The saliva flew out of his mouth, and his eyes turned red. "And your restaurant also belongs to me, so do what I say." "I can't anyway, I'm sorry." Interestingly, the guards didn't react to it. They seemed to be used to such outings from their boss, and waited for a convenient opportunity to mock the poor waitress. But then there was a fight. Anya didn't agree to drink with the mayor, and moreover, to dance. This insulted Valery Petrovich's dignity, and he began to let go of the old joke. Anya, of course, tolerated, since the etiquette required her to calmly react to all the mischief of the customers. Even the owner of the restaurant told her, "Remember, Anna Viktorovna, the customer is always right, no matter what happens." The golden words, she thought, sly jokes. Valery Petrovich apparently got tired of this, and he openly, right in front of the guests, started to insult Anna. And this despite the fact that he did not know her at all. She called her with such words as if she was the last girl in this city. Anya endured as best she could, even though everything was boiling inside her. Katia jumped up to her and tried to take her to the kitchen. "Let's go, or you'll explode now." However, Anya heard nothing. She got out of Katia's hand and ran up to the stage. At the same time, a surgeon came with his bride. The mayor tried to draw his attention to him, but then all the guests waved. The thing is that Anna grabbed the microphone and began to talk about the mayor about the fact that other people were afraid to even speak out loud. Valery Petrovich swallowed and spat on the chair. The unknowing doctor came up to him and looked with a testifying gaze. However, the mayor did not answer anything, because he had lost the gift of speech for a while. Anya continued to pour more and more revelations into his address. She reminded everyone what kind of a. It seems that he expected something like Tanya and did not rush to stop her. On the contrary, he nodded his head and looked around, watching the guests' reactions. After all, almost everyone was on Umar's hook one way or another. And this is how Valery Petrovich disbanded from their silent agreement, which began to confuse the coast. They needed to stop him, to make it clear that you cannot do this to people. But no, they continued to trick him. While Anya was using the mayor's interference, one of the guests was filming everything on the phone. There were shots of Valery Petrovich adding to the efficiency and further exposure. Other guests also joined the filming, finally understanding that the mayor had nothing to answer. And here he was not going to justify himself. He began to dance and drink at the same time. He was not bothered that the video could get on the internet. The guards really tried to stop this, but where? Interesting shots have already spread across all social networks and forums. The mayor would have preferred his own beauty. Meanwhile, Anya finished her speech. Nikolai Andreevich helped her get down from the stage. Go home, you need to rest. And how about the guests? Anya protested. They will deal with you here. The owner of the restaurant smiled. Now this will begin. It's better to go away from sin. Anya listened and went home, so as not to experience fate anymore. Nikolai Andreevich called a taxi for her and paid for it himself. What happened next in the restaurant, she did not know. Meanwhile, the mayor felt so impunity that he even ignored the request of the guards to leave the hall. He wanted more fun and demanded that he be served in the first class. The cut came when the video with his outings was seen by the patron and the volunteer voters. There was such a noise on the internet that the authorities from the region had to intervene directly. They themselves called the mayor on the phone and made him stop this whole mess. The wedding of the famous surgeon in the city was canceled. He was just angry. This made his happiness. Other ill-fated words flew out of his mouth. But they were immediately silenced by the shouts of the guests. Thank you, Nikolai Andreevich, for the hospitality. Always glad to see you. Come again if you think about it. The owner of the restaurant laughed at him. The guests began to disperse, and the mayors almost carried him out on their hands. The guards barely persuaded him to stop. Valery Petrovich no longer reported to himself what he was doing. Apparently, alcohol and faith in his impunity have blinded his mind. And he couldn't even imagine what was waiting for him in the morning. The boss was preparing a call to the city's population to avoid further announcements and shame. And only in the car a little bit, coming to his senses, the mayor realized what he had done. He grabbed his head and began to whine like a child. But they no longer tried to calm him down. The guards also realized that they had to look for a new job. They were driving in complete disappointment and rarely looked at the culprit. He looked around in the hope of finding himself sympathy. Finally, he woke up feeling guilty for what he had done. Meanwhile, a video from the restaurant looked at another, no less famous person in the city. It was millionaire Sergei Protasov, who had 2 factories and dozens of shops. He could afford not to get involved in the mayor's business and not be afraid that he would do something to him. Protasov spent his youth through such trials that the mayor did not dream, and he did not have a shaking syndrome before the authorities. As for the situation in the restaurant, in the footage, Sergei looked at the waitress in a similar manner. She was like 2 drops of water, similar to his late daughter. Elizaveta died in the wild when she was being treated with a cesarean. 2 healthy boys appeared in the world, and here is their mother. He failed to save them. Sergei was very sad then, because he lost his only child. Kirill, the twins' husband, took care of the upbringing of the twins. On his part, the millionaire promised to do everything so that his grandchildren would not need anything. He completely took care of the financial support of the family. Protasov helped before, but now the help has become even more. After watching this video several times, Sergei realized that the similarities are just identical. He realized at a glance that he should be given that waiter. A day later, the millionaire already knew the exact address. On the cloud of flops, he turned the leaflets in his hands and quietly said, "Oh, Anya, what a beautiful name." A tear immediately rolled down his cheek. Having gathered his thoughts and not saying anything about his wife, he went to the address. He still had to figure out how it happened that there was another girl, a copy of his daughter. It's strange, of course, and first of all, this had to be asked to his wife. But he decided to act differently, and without warning came to visit them. The girl was surprised to see a gray-haired man on the threshold. "Who are you?" "I am the one who will become dearer to you than any person," answered Sergei. "I don't understand what that means." Anya was surprised, but the door to the apartment was not closed in front of him. The millionaire took a photo out of his pocket and showed it to the girl. "Here, I hope this picture will lead you to the right thoughts. And yes, my name is Sergei, the surname is Protasov." Looking at the photo, Anya pulled out her eyebrows and said, "So it's me?" "Only 2 years younger. I don't remember anyone taking a picture of me then." "Not quite like that, Anya," the millionaire replied. "Wow, you know my name?" she exclaimed. "Well, yes, I had to prepare before I went to you," Sergei continued. "I see. So where did you get my photo?" "Yes, but you were not on it, but my late daughter Lisa." The guest answered and immediately grabbed her heart. Anna barely brought him to her apartment and put him on the couch. She first encountered the fact that she needed to provide medical help, but thank God, in a minute, Protasov became easier. He took a deep breath and said, "I don't know how it happened, but you look very much like her." "Yes, I already understood that." The moment came when it was necessary to find out where the double Liza came from. However, Sergei, it seems, had no information on this. He thought that Anya would tell him everything, but she also kept silent, surprisingly looking at his face. Finally, he couldn't stand it and asked, "So where did you come from?" "My mother gave birth to me, but I never saw my father," said Anya. And then the millionaire began to understand what was going on. He dialed his wife's number and ordered her to come to the house. Half an hour had passed before Oksana Protasova appeared in the apartment. The woman looked at her husband and shook like a leaf. "Explain to me, Oksana, what all this means." The husband almost screamed. "Calm down, Seryoza. I admit everything, just don't get angry." She cried and began to tell. It turned out that when the wife was supposed to give birth, she was put in the maternity home where the future Madiana worked as a nanny. There they met, becoming good friends. Oksana complained to her that her husband is a businessman who is under investigation, and it is not yet known what will happen to him. In general, she was afraid that she would not be able to raise 2 children. So she suggested to the nanny, who, by the way, was free to take after the birth of 1 child. Sergei was really under investigation at that time. He was accused of several articles, but the investigators had no evidence. Or rather, they were simply given the command to close the businessman. Everything happened in troubled and difficult times. There was a crisis on the court, and then many businessmen were in trouble. Protasov held on. He knew that he was not to blame for anything, and he, as best he could, supported his wife's connection, not assuming that she was going to do with one of the daughters. The businessman knew that he had to have twins. He even came up with names for them, Lisa and Natalia. But already sitting in prison, he received from his wife a message that 1 child had not survived in the womb. Of course, for him, this became the strongest shock. However, his wife calmed down by the fact that there was another girl left alive, and she had to be taken care of. Protasov had no reason to be so upset about such news. But he took himself in his hands and promised himself that as soon as he comes out, he will definitely surround his wife and surviving daughter, who were surrounded by love and care. In principle, everything worked out. For years later, he was released on parole, and he returned home. Sergei tried not to think about what happened in the maternity hospital. He didn't even have to think about whether it was really true. It so happened that his wife kept a terrible secret all this time. She offered Irina help to make money, but she refused them. She was enough for her to be a mother now. For the sake of convincing, Irina went to another place for a couple of years, where her distant relative's house was located. Nobody knew about it, so no one had any questions. And how did Irina suddenly have a child? She made the documents for the girl to Oksana, so that there would be no problems in the future. So their paths parted. And soon Irina returned to the city, but did not make the real mother of Anna known about it. And if not for this video on the internet, then perhaps Millian would have lived on with the thought that his only daughter had died. The information, of course, was shocking, both for Sergei and for Anna herself. Protasov looked at his wife and could not understand how she decided to do this. He had no words to express his indignation, but they found themselves with Anya. "This is how you lived all this time, Mommy. You didn't even remember that you had another daughter." "I'm sorry, Anya, but then it was a hard time." Protasov's wife tried to justify herself. "There you go. And if they let their father out, what would you do?" "I don't know. Even if you kill me, I don't know," Oksana cried. She couldn't pick the right words to ask for Anya's forgiveness. And out of desperation, Oksana turned to her husband. "Well, at least you say something. Don't be silent." "I was shocked. To be honest, I didn't expect it," answered the husband. "But we still have to solve this problem." "What problem?" "We were talking about our daughter with you," Oksana exclaimed. "I'm sorry. I'm saying something wrong," Sergei said with a wrinkled face. "Yes, it's my fault, Anya. I didn't count my strength and went to prison. If this didn't happen, Oksana wouldn't have given you to another woman. By the way, it was she who brought me up, even in poverty," said Anya, "and died in poverty. And I, as best I could, went around to survive." Oksana hugged Anya, and she did not want to leave her. Mother felt warm. She immediately thought to herself, "There is an offense, but you can't deceive the heart." At this moment, Anna wept, and looking at Sergei, she cried out, "You hurt me, but I forgive you." These words she did not utter out of despair, but because she really forgave her real parents. After all, so much time has passed. They also got an uneasy fate. Oksana told that she had to literally survive while her husband was on leave. This is after he was released. He managed to get the business management levers back in his hands. On the other hand, Oksana could have found Anya, but she had a verbal agreement that neither she nor Irina would get into each other's business and would not create problems. Perhaps if Mariania had not opened the truth before death, then his family reunion would have happened much faster. Having calmed down a little, the girl got up from the couch and went to the kitchen. "Now I will feed the boss. I wonder who it is?" the Protasov spouses asked in one voice. "My pet. You can look," the daughter replied. It turns out that the puppy hid under the kitchen table. When a stranger appeared in Anna's apartment, he didn't scream at him. He just listened to the sounds, trying to determine if his mistress was in danger. Oksana and Sergei also went to the kitchen and saw a snow-white puppy under the table. "Wow, how fluffy." Protasov tried to pet him, and he didn't throw himself at him. "Yes, you can pet him," said Anna. "If he sees that everything is fine with me, he will not be angry." Bars ate from the bowl and received a generous portion of tenderness from the host guests. Meanwhile, Sergei suggested going to their house. "You'll just look at the photo album of your sister there," said father. Anya agreed, and an hour later they were in the country house. Elizabeth's husband came there too. As soon as he saw Anya, he had a stupor. She really looked like his late wife. Looking at the photos in the album, Anna began to recognize herself in them. After all, they were almost the same, only she didn't know what kind of sister she was. But then her father enlightened her, telling her that Lisa also grew up a calm child. She was respected at school, and she studied at the same high school, just like Anna. But her fate turned out to be much better and more satiated. And it was the only black spot, which gave her a negative. At the same time, Anya did not want to be angry with the Protasovs anymore. She made the appropriate conclusions and decided that she needed to let go of the past, especially since there were nephews who needed care. Anya offered Kirill help in their upbringing, and he willingly accepted her. It seems that the late husband of the sister has penetrated into her with distrust. Soon they all went to the cemetery together to visit Irina's grave. Sergei agreed with the director and paid all the expenses for the monument, and also concluded the agreement on leaving the grave. Now special employees had to look after her. Soon Anya finally moved to the Protasov's garden house. She took Barka from her apartment and decided to give her apartment to the students. So she turned out to be even closer to Kirill and his children. There was gradually a sympathy between them. Anya began to notice how he treated her and what he said. It became clear that Kirill needed support as a loving person. Not immediately, but they found common points of contact. At the same time, Protasov spouses only contributed to the fact that Anya and Kirill began to live together. After all, if you don't look for differences, it seemed from the outside that this is the most ordinary family. Anya was really worried that Kirill would see her dead wife. But no, he admitted that he was bitter in his heart and that he needed to give his heart a second chance. Kirill, in turn, gently looked after her to show true relationships. He did not rush her, but said that she was his last love in this life. After such confessions, there could be no doubt. Anya decided to marry Kirill. In addition, she also attached herself to her nephews. What about Damira? Then Valery Petrovich received what he deserved. He was removed from office and announced early elections. Having left without a pocket, the former mayor drank. At first it was not much, a glass of another one a day to relieve tension and soothe pain. But then everything rolled down, and he no longer saw anything in front of him. The blue pit sucked harder and harder, holding a dead grip over his throat. As well as family relations. A month later, his wife filed for divorce and left. They were no longer united. Valery Petrovich was left with nothing when he was confiscated. They regretted it and did not start a plant corruption. They simply prohibited working on state positions, and ordinary janitors were not taken because many businessmen in the city rebelled against him. Thank you for your kind comments and support with the thumb up button. See you soon.